Today we're going to start this video from Polo Park here in Miami Beach, and you can see it's totally empty today and everything is wet because we're starting to finally get some of this rain and wind from Hurricane Ian. And luckily here in Miami, guys, we're not going to be hit by this too hard. Whenever they first started talking about this, they were showing some of the models that pushed it maybe over to Miami if it took a hard right turn, but now it's looking like it's not going to hit here. It's probably going to hit somewhere anywhere between Tampa and the Florida Panhandle, somewhere in there. But the thing is, with these big storms like this, guys, Hurricane Ian, for example, is 500 miles wide. So even all the way over here in Miami, even though we're going to be far away from this thing, the outer rain bands and wind that comes from these huge storms like this, we're still going to be feeling all the way over here in Miami. So we might see some tropical storm conditions occasionally over the next couple days, and we're already starting to get some of the rain today. It's going to be on and off rain all day long. Even right now it's drizzling out here, but it's not pouring. So definitely another window of opportunity for me to come out here. But I wanted to come here because we've never been here before, and it's one of the coolest little parks they have over here, right next to the middle school. They got basketball courts, workout area, swing sets. They got tennis courts over there, and then they have this whole baseball field here we're going to walk around. But it's just a cool little spot to record a video, and it's super peaceful out here today because it's raining and no one comes out in the rain, basically. Now I want to spend some time in this video talking about Hurricane Ian because obviously it affects basically everyone who lives in Florida, and there's a lot of newcomers in Florida that probably have never been through a hurricane before. Well, you probably never want to be through one, guys. I made a video a long time ago about what my experience was like when I went through Hurricane Irma back in 2017. I'll put up a picture of the thumbnail of that video for anybody who wants to go back and watch that video. But it's definitely not something you want to experience. And for example, right now in Hillsborough County, near Tampa, they're already starting to call for evacuations. And let me tell you guys, as someone who's been through one of these storms, and Hurricane Irma wasn't even a direct hit to Miami. It hit more south down by the Keys, but it was another very large storm. Just like this Hurricane Ian, we still got Category 2 hurricane conditions over here, even though it was downgraded to like a 3 or a 4 by the time it made landfall. But you don't want to go through this because it's one of those things where you're going to lose power. It's basically a guarantee. And great if you have a generator and you're ready for that and you can just, keep your house running and all your appliances going and things like that. That'll make the experience much better for you. But like when you live in a condo like I do, they also shut off the water in a lot of buildings too to prevent problems from happening with the water system. So we had no water, no electricity for pretty much 5 days when Hurricane Irma hit. So I'm not going to get into the whole story on that. I have the whole video linked below if you want to check that out. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because it looks like Hurricane Ian is going to be a very similar story to what Irma was. It's a very powerful hurricane and it's a very large hurricane. So most of the state of Florida is going to get brushed by this thing one way or another. And if they're telling you to evacuate, you probably want to listen, guys, because even if your life isn't in danger, even if you are safe somewhere, it's still a miserable experience. And if they tell you to evacuate, you're better off just doing it. Some of you guys asked me, what my plan was. Like, we're ready for this thing. Even if it was going to come here, we already have supplies and stuff stocked up. So, that's not a problem. But honestly, if the storm would be like a Category 3 or higher, we would probably just leave Miami. We would drive out of here, drive out of harm's way, even drive all the way out of Florida if we had to. But I wouldn't want to be sticking around for another really strong hurricane like we went through with Irma, that's for sure. You go through it once, you probably never want to go through it again. A lot of people that live in Central Florida, they think, well, you can never really get hit by one of these hurricanes, but that's actually not true. And this Hurricane Ian is going to be a perfect example of just how untrue that is, because whether it hits by the Panhandle or down by Tampa, this thing is gonna hit somewhere in Florida, and it's gonna probably move more inland. And even if you don't get the worst of the winds because the storm dies down once it's over land, and even if you don't get the storm surge because you don't live on the coast, you might think, hey, I'm protected. Well, guess what, guys? They're predicting that this storm could drop up to 2 feet of rainfall within a span of just 24 to 48 hours on Central Florida. So flooding is the biggest risk that a lot of people have to worry about. And you can say, oh, well, my house is 20 feet above sea level, I'm not gonna get flooded. But it doesn't work like that, guys. When you get that much rainfall in one place, you can see just right here behind me in all these examples, we just got a little bit of rainfall here. Because we've already been getting so much rain here in Florida, prior to this storm coming, the ground is saturated, okay? And you can see just from the little bit of rain that we're getting right now, that everything is pooled up like this. So if you live in a house, and even though it's 20 feet above sea level, you could be in this situation where the ground is so saturated that it's just gonna keep piling up with water, and you can still have flooding issues and water intrusion issues in your house. And that's when it comes into play. Do you have flood insurance? Well, my guess is you probably don't, because if you live 20 feet above sea level, most people who are in that situation think that I can never get flooded. But it's not true, guys, especially when you get that much rain in such a short period of time. So this is the thing that people in Central Florida need to be worried about, is literally the massive amount of rain that you could get from this thing. And this is a very slow moving storm, so it's gonna be hovering around there for a little while. It's only moving like 13 miles an hour right now, just like Irma did. It was a very slow moving storm. It seemed like it took forever for it to pass by. I'm glad that it's not coming to Miami. Obviously, everybody's always happy when it's not coming to your neighborhood, but you know, I feel for my fellow Floridians up north that are gonna get rocked by this thing, and I personally know how much it sucks to get hit by one of these storms, so you never wish this on anybody, guys. See, they got these basketball courts, huge playground over there, and even tennis courts over here. This is like one of the coolest little parks here in Miami Beach because they have just a little bit of everything. It's really nice. But you know, if we look at people that are running out to the stores right now and loading up on supplies and trying to get ready for this thing, to me, that's like the perfect analogy of what's happening in the financial world. You're seeing people who are unprepared or underprepared dash out at the last minute to get prepared. And that's not the way to be prepared, guys. The way to be prepared is to already have the stuff on hand, just like I do. I don't have to go to the store and rush every time they call for one of these storms, because I already have stuff. You know, we do grocery shopping a month in advance, like I told you guys in a previous video. We're stocked up on food and water and things that we need to survive 5 more days without power, even though that's not going to happen here. You know, at best, if we did lose power in Miami, maybe it'll be for a couple hours. So I'm not really worried about it. But people who live in these other areas are worried about it because they're not ready. And similarly to people's finances, they're not ready for this recession. They're not ready to lose their job. And that's something that could easily be happening to a lot of people sooner than later. And this is why I'm always talking about these things on the channel, not to really scare anybody, but to make sure you are prepared for what's to come, because it's better to be ready for things and not actually need to use your resources than, you know, to be completely unprepared, like everybody dashing out buying the hurricane supplies that have nothing. So it's not a spot you want to be in. You're fighting, you know, lines at the stores, you're fighting empty shelves, traffic, road rage, stores not having what you need. It's just a pain in the ass. Who wants to deal with that? I know I certainly don't. Now, obviously, you know, I'm a seasoned Florida resident here, so I'm not surprised when these things happen, or, you know, this is nothing new. Every year, there seems to be always some sort of threat of a storm. After I got home from filming this video, I figured I'd take a few extra shots for you guys because the wind really started picking up, as it usually does when we get one of these storms. And look at that. This power transformer just exploded over there. Half the restaurants and stuff by my neighborhood lost power, and it's just funny because it just takes a little bit of wind to just knock out power in some of these areas, and that's just the beginning of it. And I caught some downpours for you too, which I'll share later in the video. But let's talk about the insurance aspect to this, guys. If we look at past hurricanes like Hurricane Irma, for example, that storm caused $50 billion in damages in Florida in 2017. Hurricane Michael, a year later, 2018, caused $19 billion worth of damages, okay? And the biggest storm to ever hit Florida, which was Hurricane Andrew, back then caused $26 billion in damages, but that was in 1992, and when you adjust that number for inflation, that's more like $47 billion today. So these hurricanes can cause massive amounts of damage, guys, and really shake up the insurance market. And as you all know, we're already on shaky ground with insurance in Florida. And the reason why this could make things even worse here is because when you have these hurricanes that smash into any part of the state, what you get is you get a ton of claims happening all at once. So you have a bunch of people that need help all at the same time. And not only does that completely overload the system, but it can also cause shortages in funding. And since Citizens Insurance is now larger than it's ever been, which is the last resort insurance company here in Florida, there are some scenarios that can play out if something like this were to happen, where they're going to have to charge everybody extra money because of all these claims happening at once. And by the way, I want to thank one of my viewers, Alexander, for sending me this insurance story, because I want to give you always the latest update on this when I hear something. To put this into perspective, guys, we look at these past hurricanes that do big damage, $50 billion, right? Citizens Insurance is only prepared to pay about $5 billion to $6 billion in damages at any given moment, like all at once. Like, that's the amount of reserves they have. So imagine if you have a lot of these Citizens customers making claims all at the same time, then that easily can overload the system. In fact, so much so that if every single one of the people that has a Citizens policy made a claim at the same time, you'd be looking at about $347 billion with a B in damages, guys. So we're talking like 8 times more than the total damages of every hurricane that's ever hit, really. So it's a lot of money. And these insurance companies, including Citizens, won't be able to make the payments. So what do they do when this happens? Well, Citizens is a state-backed insurance company. So the first thing they're going to do is they are going to make assessments towards their own customers, which is going to be obviously increasing the premiums. The next thing they do, if they still don't have enough money to pay the claims, they will make assessments on other policyholders who have different insurance companies, private insurance companies across Florida. And if that's still not enough money, they can then go ahead and raise insurance rates for several years, 30% through all different types of insurance throughout the entire state. So what this looks like is we're talking about a 30% increase in homeowners insurance, renters insurance, car insurance. Any type of insurance that is issued here in the state of Florida will be raised 30% if they cannot pay for this. So that's why they call Citizens Insurance the insurance company of last resort, because this is basically the worst case scenario. And if Florida's ever been facing an insurance crisis of worst case scenario, this is it right now with this impending hurricane, because it is going to hit Florida, and we are going to see probably some big insurance companies come out of this in the future, guys. So of course, when there is some news on that, I'll be updating you, but I can already imagine that there are going to be thousands, if not tens of thousands of claims coming after this Hurricane Ian hits somewhere in Florida. This is how these rain bands always work with these hurricanes. We'll get soaked like that, ton of rain, bunch of wind come in, and then it'll stop like nothing happened, and then a few hours later it'll happen all over again. It's pretty much the same story for days. But I have to say, guys, sometimes the storms are worth it, because look at that view afterwards, after it's all calmed down. So beautiful with that bursting orange in the sky, the sunset back there, absolutely beautiful. One thing that all of the central banks around the world are in agreement on right now is they are all in agreement that inflation is the biggest issue now worldwide that needs to be addressed. And it's such a big issue that more than 80 countries right now are going to be raising their interest rates to try to combat this inflation, guys. So that's how severe the situation is. It's so bad that more than 80 of the world's biggest economies, the biggest countries, need to start raising their interest rates, and most of them have already done so. They've already been even ahead of us in some countries by doing this. But places like the UK, all of Europe, Canada, Switzerland, Indonesia, they're all going to be raising their interest rates to fight inflation, okay? And this is the largest lateral move across all of these countries that we've seen in over 50 years to basically raise these rates simultaneously to curb inflation. So this is a big deal, guys. This is a world event right now. That's how big this is. So all the experts now are calling for big job losses to come from this, which really is not a big surprise. This is something that we've been talking about here on the channel, and this is going to affect commerce and business worldwide. So all these places could be struggling with more unemployment and less productivity when it comes to business and things like that. Now, one thing that they look at to determine if a recession's coming and how bad the economic downturn will be is they look at corporate earnings, guys. And a little over a week ago, I did a video about FedEx and how their share price is starting to fall through the floor. These guys are coming up with a $500 million revenue shortage from what they predicted earlier this year. So that's $500 million, guys, that FedEx thinks that they're going to be short by the end of the year. And it's not just FedEx, okay? That's just one company. If you look at the entire stock market, pretty much everything is suffering right now. The S&P 500's down. The Dow is down. The NASDAQ is down. Open Door is down. FedEx is down. Every single thing that you look at right now is down. If they're looking at corporate earnings as a foreshadowing of this recession, well, then I think it's pretty obvious that we're already in one. And there are some sane people out there who are saying this already, like me, like Dan from I Allegedly. I know some of you guys watch him. I watch his channel too. Also, the CEO from Restoration Hardware. His quote is this: "We're in a recession, guys. Anybody who thinks we're not in a recession is crazy." That's what the CEO said of Restoration Hardware. The housing market's in a recession, and this is just getting started. And that sounds pretty familiar. This is the same thing that I've been saying. And it's not to scare anybody, it's because it's true. That's why I'm saying this. That's why guys like this are coming out and saying this. Because if you're unaware of these things, you're the one who's most likely to get hurt, right? If you don't know about this, you're the guy who's out right now scrambling at the last minute to buy all these things at the store, okay? For the hurricane. You're the one that, oh, I just found out about this. I actually need to be prepared. I need to have stuff on hand for this hurricane. What am I gonna do? You're the same guy that doesn't know about these things or claiming that everything's gonna be okay. And I'm stopping here because we see a house for sale. So let's check this out. You know, we might have actually passed by this house before, guys. I'm gonna look in my old videos and see what's going on with it. Yes, we did walk by this house back on August 4th, still had the same $400,000 price cut and still no takers. And I personally think more than anything right now, people need to be prepared to lose their job. You need to be prepared to be laid off. And you might say, well, Michael, how do I prepare for something like that? Well, the only thing you really can do is already be looking at other job opportunities out there just in case you do get canned, right? And maybe have a side hustle going where if you lose your job, then that's not your complete only source of income. That would be another way to kind of be proactive and get ahead of this thing. And the other thing that you can do, you can have money saved up, guys. That's what the emergency fund is for. That's why all the financial experts will tell you to have a 6-month emergency fund. So that way you can pay your bills for 6 months if something goes down like this. Because if it takes 2 or 3 months for you to find another job, especially in a tough recession where there's not that many people hiring, then that emergency fund is literally going to save you from foreclosure. It's going to keep a roof over your head. It's going to keep your family fed. So it's important. And this is really happening because there are a lot of companies who are announcing there are going to be cutbacks, which include layoffs. So for example, if we look at Gap, the clothing company, they're going to be cutting 500 corporate jobs, guys. So these are white collar jobs. These aren't people working in the store trying to help you decide which jeans to buy. These are people at the corporate level who are going to get axed from gap, okay? And they're going to be eliminating some jobs in the company entirely, not just cutting back, but some roles in the company will just no longer exist after these layoffs. You have companies like Walmart, Best Buy, Bed Bath & Beyond announcing layoffs and cutbacks. And the fact that this is a worldwide phenomenon now, this is a worldwide problem, these are just American companies we're talking about, but you can rest assured that these 80 other countries that are going to be raising interest rates are going to be going through the same thing right now. And that's what makes this probably worse than 2008, guys. This is not an American problem. This is a global recession that's happening. And it's just getting started right now. So the more you know about it and the more prepared you are for it, then I think the better off you'll be. Because a lot of people think that based on some of the comments that everything's fine, the housing market's still strong, unemployment's still low. It's not. It's not, guys. It isn't. You can think that all you want, but all these numbers, all these reports that they put out there on these things are designed to make everybody feel like, you know, it's going to be okay, because they don't want people panicking and causing even more trouble. They want people to believe it's going to be okay and not worry about it until it's too late, essentially. But it's not all bad news, guys. There is some good news to all of this. And I know a lot of the critics about the housing market are going to say this is no big deal or whatever. But I want to thank John, another one of my viewers, for sending me this story about how rents are starting to come down in a lot of different American cities, and sometimes significantly. Like, for example, if we look at the number one place where rent is coming down, guys, if we look at St. Louis, Missouri right now, rent prices have dropped 40% recently. So that's almost half. That is a significant decline. And right now, the average rent for a one bedroom there is about $11.33 a month. You go to somewhere like Long Beach, California, prices are down 24%. Okay, Baltimore, Maryland's down 20% to one bedroom there costing about $1,600 a month. Now, I think that's still expensive. $1,600 a month is not cheap, but imagine if it came down by 20%, it was 20% more expensive just a few months ago. I know a lot of people are going to complain and say, well, that's not enough, Michael. I'm still paying way too much in rent, or mine went up 50% or whatever. But that's how it starts, because you need to have these decreases for the market to start changing. And even though it might not look like a lot, or your rent even went up, it didn't go down, because these are only in certain cities, guys. Just like with the housing crash and home prices coming down, you're going to see different areas of the country disproportionately affected by this whole thing. And these places where the rents are coming down are mostly in areas where it just got too high too fast, and the rents that they were asking do not keep up with the local wages. So I think you're going to see more of this happen in Florida here too, because one of the places on this list was Jacksonville, Florida, where the rent is down 14%, down to $15.35 for a one bedroom. But when you come to places like Miami, it's still insane. The rent prices here have easily gone up 50%. Some people have seen literally double increases in their rent over the past couple of years. I know some of them, and it's horrible. And this is what's really happening out there. So like we talked about in previous videos, pretty much the only way to defeat this thing is you might have to look at moving to a different area. You might have to move to one of these cities that on this list where rental prices are going down if you want to save money. And if you're not willing to do that, then you need to be willing to suck it up and pay the extra increases in rent, or try to find something cheaper. There's really no way around this thing. But to kick that all off, if you want the most affordable place to live, you can go to somewhere like Oklahoma City, guys. The median rent there is still only $973 a month. So that's basically affordable for everyone. I know most people would never think of moving to a place like Oklahoma City, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But I think overall, this is gonna be good news for renters in a lot of different areas. If you're finally starting to see prices come down, this is what renters desperately need. And you're going to see this probably start to happen in more and more cities as people just cannot afford to pay anymore. The rent prices have clearly leveled off and are starting to come back down to reality, and that's super important, especially if you're a tenant out there. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to the channel. Check out my next video on the screen right over here, and I'll catch you over in the next one.